Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Ibrahim Olabi, who is Syria's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations. He joins us from New York. Ambassador, last time we spoke, this position was not yet announced. You were obviously keeping quiet about it. So thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us, and congratulations first up. But congratulations for something else, because your president, Ahmed Al-Sharaa, became Syria's first head of state to speak at that gathering since the 1960s. First of all, how did it feel to see the leader of Syria at that podium?
Well, thank you for having me again. It's, albeit in a different position, it's been incredibly overwhelming. The Assad regime, both father and son, have for some reason not participated in any of the kind of General Assembly meetings. Even the meeting you mentioned in '67 was an extraordinary meeting. It wasn't even that forum in September where everyone comes. So it's actually the first president since 1945 to participate in an ordinary summit. The '67 one was an extraordinary one. So it was a feeling that Syria is back. Syria is back to the international community. Syria is engaging with the world. Syria is no longer a pariah state that is kind of, concealed upon itself, not engaging. I mean, I wish it was an issue of not engaging at the time of the regime. It was a matter of harming. It was a matter of, exporting drugs and Captagon to the region. It was a matter of breaking every international law that this forum has created, including the use of chemical weapons. So it was really a surreal moment for Syria to be back, for Syria to be represented by President Ahmed Al-Sharaa with his background and his journey and his story, but also to be accompanied by many other ministers. The foreign minister obviously is the lead minister, but we also, for example, had Ra'ad al-Saleh there, who was until not very long the head of the White Helmets, an organization that was targeted in Syria, subject to disinformation, now sitting behind Syria's placard as the minister for emergencies. We had the minister Hind Qabawat, a Syrian Christian, who's lived in Canada, set up civil society organizations for women empowerment, also as a Syrian minister. We had Hamza al-Mustafa, someone who set up TV channels, at the time of the opposition, now become information and media minister. So, and that's just the ministerial level, let alone colleagues who've come from Damascus, who with, different backgrounds, civil society, people who have spent and sacrificed their time in Idlib. And, it's just been surreal throughout, and the excitement from states to meet us saying, you could have just, refused to engage with the international community because the international community had nothing to do with the liberation of Syria. It was a Syrian-led operation, but yet you chose to kind of come here and engage with the world. So there was a lot of excitement for members of the international community, both states and the UN Secretariat itself.
Yeah, I mean, you've slightly anticipated my next question, which was, did it feel like inside that hall there was a sort of an overwhelming sense of support for your country?
Absolutely. I mean, Syria's stability has shown, through example, and not a very nice one, that its instability causes instability to the world, not just the region. President Macron at some point said, the Syrian conflict has shown that Syrians can walk to Europe, right? And let alone a lot of other issues. Yes, I mean, we had a marathon of meetings, which was a nightmare to organize, but a marathon of meetings. We had to split sometimes the president and the foreign minister because we couldn't just accommodate all the meeting requests and the meetings that we wanted to have. Everyone saw Syria as a hopeful story. Of course, they have questions, they want to understand, they've got concerns, and that's absolutely fine, and we're there to address them. But everyone was interested as to who are these new Syrians who have just stepped foot in New York, and what do they stand for? And with that, there was a lot of excitement in the rooms, both kind of the public room, but also the private, the kind of closed rooms in the halls and so on. I mean, the president is someone where when he walks with the foreign minister, heads turn, right? He's for all the kind of story that Syria has had, and that story is what formed part of his speech. He talked about Al-Hikaya Suriya, the Syrian story, right? And the story of suffering and the story of brutality and the story of liberation, and that the story has not ended. And then went that back to Idlib and talked about how now the story continues when it comes to development and the economy.
Yeah, and just in terms of other things that your president said at the podium, I mean, he called for the lifting of international sanctions on Syria. And I'm just wondering, apart from that, and I mean, what would you say was the main message that he wanted to get across to that hall?
The message was about Syria and Syrians. The message was about Damascus, about the cultural importance that it has, the importance in the region that it has, and that how this liberation of Syria wasn't just the liberation of Syria and Syrians. It was a liberation that helped, that is in the interest of the entire world. There was also an economic message, in addition also to lifting whatever remains from sanctions, which isn't much now, thanks to President Trump's kind of courageous decision, and the European Union and other countries who've taken similar steps, but was one of investment and one of economy. Syria is at a trade route. It has incredible important ports, internet cables, flight routes, aviations, workforce, human capital, resources. Syrians, wherever they've gone throughout this kind of last 10 years have excelled, and to the extent that some countries when they met us bilaterally said we would love for some to voluntarily return, but some we must stay because they're holding key positions and in key sectors in the economy. So it was a message about what Syria can offer to the world.
For me, one of the really striking images amongst, of course, seeing your president at the podium was seeing your president alongside the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, and the restoration, they said, of diplomatic ties between Kyiv and Damascus. And I'm wondering whether that signifies or indicates a pivot away from Russia, because, of course, Russia was the country that really did a great deal to keep President Bashar al-Assad in power.
No, well, look, since the liberation of Syria, there was a military liberation, but there was also diplomatic efforts. And the diplomatic efforts were to have a balanced relationship that served the interest of the Syrian people. And that's why the relationships with Russia remain. I accompanied the foreign minister when he went on the first visit to Moscow. We met Foreign Minister Lavrov. And also I was in the meeting in the UN when we met the Russian delegation and the Foreign Minister Lavrov, again, I think on the same day that we met the Ukrainians, or one day apart. And that's really how the Syrian diplomacy works now. It's to see where the interests of the Syrian people lies and who has what to offer, and how we can make this work for the interest of the people. It's no longer a matter of kind of polls or historic alliances. Everything is going to be reassessed. And the meeting with Lavrov was for that, and the meeting with President Zelensky was also for that. I mean, there was no reason why the diplomatic ties at the time of the regime should have been cut. I mean, because the Syrian regime took full sides in that, and we're keen on having balanced and engaged relationships with all those who wish well upon the Syrian people. And this was, the policy since day one. And with that, it didn't make sense for the diplomatic ties with Ukraine to be any longer cut. But I tell you, as being in the meeting was surreal in its nature. It's very two strong individuals who led or are leading kind of wars and leading their people at the moment. It was a surreal moment to witness on a personal level.
Sure, and one of the other, I mean, the list is so long, but one of the other important developments during that meeting, in those talks in New York, was that, there was going to be a big announcement whereby some sort of a deal was struck between the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and your president, but it didn't seem to happen at the last minute. But what sort of a deal, what's the scope of a possible deal with Israel? What would it look like?
Well, on the first point, I mean, this was all kind of speculation. As someone now who is in government and is privy to some of these things, it's just sometimes very entertaining to see the amount of kind of rumors that go around and expectations that build upon expectations on things. We are engaging with the Israeli government on a security deal, one that goes into the details of the amount of forces being present on each side of the border, the type of weaponry, the type of locations, and it's that kind of technical military nature that guarantees both the security and the sovereignty of Syrians and the security of the region. And that's what we're kind of really focused on. The Syrian government has been very clear that it has no mandate to go beyond that. And that's where the focus will be. The focus is actually, because that's there's been more than 1,000 Israeli strikes since the fall of the regime and zero retaliation. There has been, attacks on sites, on key military infrastructure, even on sites that, may contain chemical weapons, which makes our job very much harder now to get rid of them with the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. And obviously the military incursions and supporting certain factions in Sweden that unfortunately put the people in Sweden in a more difficult conundrum, and put some of the Druze communities of Syria in a conundrum, because now they have to justify or seen as such, well, when the Syrian government position was like always Druze and Sweden form an integral part of Syrian society and of Syria. So because of all these kind of incursions and interventions, we have engaged in kind of security talks that are still ongoing, and they're on the kind of technical fine details at the moment. Important details, but kind of fine details. But there's nothing beyond that.
Okay, we're drawing to the close. I just want to ask you just briefly, we were speaking a short while ago to Jason Greenblatt, who is one of the architects of the first round of Abraham Accords. And I put it to him that Syria looked like being a very good contender for being one of the next signatories of the Abraham Accords. And he seemed to think that was the case. What do you think?
Well, I think talking about the Abraham Accords or any kind of deal beyond the security deal is premature. We still have occupied land. Yesterday, the foreign ministry was very clear that the Golan Heights, as per the Security Council resolutions, is still occupied lands. We still have military incursions. We still have troops that are placed in the buffer zone. We still have Israeli strikes. Let us resolve these first, and then you could ask me that question if we get there, and then I'll let you know what the answer is. But at the moment, it's still very, very premature to even think about these things while we still have violations of Syria's sovereignty ongoing.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Ambassador Ibrahim Olabi, thank you very much indeed for your time, sir. Well, that's all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, bye-bye.